If you enjoy this program, please like and subscribe. The Jew is critical to them because it's the conversion of a Jew that can bring about the second coming of Jesus. And that's why missionaries are here, targeting Jews for conversion in a way that's quite unusual, sometimes blurring the distinction between Judaism and Christianity in order to lure Jews who might otherwise resist a straightforward Christian message. This is the center of Jerusalem. As you can imagine, evangelical Christians who are targeting Jews for conversion come here, right here, to bring the gospel to the Jews, to convert the Jewish people to Christianity. It's part of an effort that's much larger than what's expressed in the Christian Bible. The New Testament prioritizes Jews for conversion. Let's be very clear about that. In Matthew chapter 10, disciples are told to not even go to Gentiles, or the cities of the Samaritans, whom the authors of the New Testament did not consider real Jews. Matthew chapter 10, verse 5 and 6, only go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's really important. Paul echoes that sentiment in the book of Romans. Romans chapter 1, verse 16, the author of about half the books in the Christian canon says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. It's the power and salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and then to the Greek. And when he says then to the Greek, he means then to the Gentile. What's so striking about all that, of course, is that Greek means Gentile in the view of Romans. And yet, not only is the book of Romans, but all the books of the Christian Bible, all the books of the Christian canon were written in Greek, not Hebrew, not the language of the Jewish scriptures, but the Greek language, the Gentile language, to the Jew first and then to the Greek. That's what it actually says in the book of Romans, in the Greek. Many Christian translators recognize what is intended here and rather translate it then to the Gentile. But the key is that the Jew first. The Jewish people, moreover, present a problem for the church, a staggering problem for the church, and this is not difficult to figure out. After all, the idea of a Messiah is uniquely Jewish. An idea of a man coming at the end of days, ushering in a utopian society from the house of David, that idea is only conveyed in the Hebrew Bible, meaning in the empire, no one else was looking for a Messiah. Let me rephrase that. No one else would even know what a Messiah is, only the Jews, and it is only the Jews that can read their Bible in its original language. Only the Jews. Judaism at that time was the only monotheistic religion in the world, the only one. So why don't the Jewish people believe in Jesus? Well, what have they discovered that others appear to have not figured out? So as it turns out, it's only the conversion of a Jew to Christianity that can lend any credibility to the cross. Moreover, the question remains, why don't the Jews believe this stuff? Why don't the Jews believe in the core tenets of the Christian religion? Why not? It's a big question because the Jews should have if he was. the Jews could have if they thought he was. And moreover, a point I think many people miss is the Jews were there, not the people of Europe, not the people of Asia Minor. It was the Jews who were in the land of Israel who would have met Jesus, encountered him, and they would have made a good call on this point. They would have said, well, he's the one, if he was the one. This is very problematic, and the church is going to spend a considerable amount of time trying to solve this problem, explain to parishioners, well, if it's so obvious that Jesus is the Messiah, why don't the Jews believe this? And there's not going to be one attempt to solve this issue. There'll be many attempts to solve this issue. Some of them are not pretty. The Jews being the seed of the devil, John 8:44. We're demonic, essentially. So we're blinded. And Paul makes that argument in his second letter to Corinth and 2 Corinthians that the Jews are supernaturally blinded. They have a veil over their eyes. Or else, how do you explain why they don't believe it if it really makes that much sense? Paul's going to, in his first letter to Corinth, make the case that, in fact, this was a grand mystery, that no one could have known about it. You see how important this was to the writers of the Christian Bible. Like, why don't the Jews believe this? It's not like, why don't the people of Persia not believe this? Why don't the Jews believe this? Paul makes the case that this was a grand mystery. This is a theme that repeats itself in the Christian Bible. I want to change that. This is a theme that comes up over and over again in Paul's letters. Paul repeatedly makes the case that this whole theme, this whole scheme, this whole plan of God was a grand mystery, and that's right, Paul, I have access to that information. Paul, know the truth. You got it? Hope you're following this. This becomes a very big deal to Paul. He's going to make that case in Ephesians chapter 3 in the first handful of passages. I have that revelation. In the book of Galatians, in the first two chapters, he's going to explain why not only does he have that unique revelation, but he didn't get it in Jerusalem. Or more importantly, he didn't get it from Jerusalem. It's unique to him. Follow me. I have it, and I didn't get it from the so-called pillars of the church. I surely didn't get it from Peter, who he accuses of being a hypocrite in those very passages. This is not an accident. This is planned. It makes an enormous amount of sense in that world. Why is it that missionaries insist that the notion that the Messiah is supposed to suffer and die and rise on the third day is explicitly in the Bible? Paul is saying essentially it's not. And it's his remarkable revelation that can impart this. In fact, he says in 1 Corinthians 2, verse 7 and 8, very striking passages, that if the rulers of the generation, meaning the generation of Jesus, if they would have understood this plan that I have access to, they would have done everything possible not to crucify Jesus. They would have never killed the Lord of glory in their language. See? So all these are methods to explain, like, why don't the Jews believe? Perhaps this is a time when the Gentiles are to be grafted in, and this would trigger some jealousy among the Jews. Paul makes that case in the book of Romans. So you have all sorts of methods, approaches that early Christians are taking to try to solve the most obvious question: why don't the Jews believe this? Are they plain evil? Are they demonic? Are they spiritually blind? And only Paul know the answer? It really depends on which book, but this is a big deal and remains a very big deal to this day. And how do Christians solve this issue? Well, convert your Jews to Christianity. That might go a long way to solve this conundrum. And they're here. They're here in huge numbers right here in the Holy Land. And their purpose is to convert the Jews to Christianity. I mean, within 100 feet of me, you have Messianic congregations, Messianic centers, This is just the center of it all. Why? Why are they here? Why aren't they in Lebanon? Well, there are virtually no Jews in Lebanon. This is where the Jews are. This is where the conversion has to take place. Listen carefully. Moreover, these Christians believe that the Jews have a unique role in launching and triggering Jesus' second coming. Now, just be aware of this. The notion that the Messiah is to come a second time can only be found in made-up religions. I'm not kidding. The notion that the Messiah has come twice is not in the Hebrew Bible. And when you hear missionaries discuss this, just be aware that every false Messiah had to be explained away by a second coming. It's not biblical. Setting that aside, the Christians who are interested in converting Jews, particularly dispensationalist Christians, the Christian Zionist variety, they believe that in order for Jesus to make a second coming, the Jews first have to be converted to Christianity. It's based on a passage in a rather acrimonious chapter, Matthew 23. We're told that Jesus says, I will not return unless you say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. Because when Jesus makes that statement, when he says, Baruch haba b'shem Hashem, or when he says, I will not return unless the Jews say, Baruch haba b'shem Hashem, blessed are those who come in the name of the Lord, he was speaking in front of who? Matthew 23. Who is the audience? Jews. Who is Jesus supposedly speaking to and about? Jews. What kind of Jews? Pharisees, scribes, who have an authority directly from Moses, but don't believe. And worse, they're hypocrites and vipers. But the key for us is that the Jews have to accept that Jesus is the Messiah in order for Jesus to make the second coming. And that's why they're here, and they're everywhere. They're here to make sure that happens. And therefore the Jews, more than anyone else, they want to convert the world, make no mistake about that. They want to convert those in the African continent, in Europe, in Scandinavia. They want to convert everyone. But the Jew is critical to them because it's the conversion of a Jew that can bring about the second coming of Jesus. That's what's critical. Pay careful attention to this. And that's why missionaries are here, targeting Jews for conversion in a way that's quite unusual, sometimes blurring the distinction between Judaism and Christianity, in order to lure Jews who might otherwise resist a straightforward Christian message. Did I say sometimes? Scratch that. They always do that. They're always seeking to portray the Christian religion in Jewish terms in order to evangelize Jews. It's a very serious issue here in the Holy Land. And that's why they're here. Because it's the mass conversion of the Jews right here in the Holy Land that will trigger Jesus' second coming. So it is more important to them to convert the Jews to Christianity than it is anyone else, than it is to the Chinese, the Koreans, the Jews. The Jews must be converted for so many reasons. Not only is there a directive, a mandate in the Christian Bible to convert the Jews before anyone else, for non-Jews, not only is it the reluctance of Jews to convert to Christianity, not only is that a problem, and it's a staggering problem for them. That's why they parade their converts to Christianity, Jewish converts to Christianity, in churches all over the world, like it's an ornament to them. A Jew who's accepted Christ. That gives them a big high. But it's also to trigger the second coming. Now, we could have this conversation, and I could say to you that, well, these missionaries all over the place, and they're here. They really are, they're all over this place. I could say to you that they're the problem. They're the people we need to be concerned about, and we do. It's harder, I think, to point the finger at ourselves and to ask, what are we doing wrong? Let me be clear. If our sons and daughters understood the Hebrew Bible, understood the Jewish scriptures, were acquainted with messianic prophecies that are on display throughout the Hebrew scriptures, Jews for Jesus and Chosen People Ministries, they wouldn't be able to convert anyone, not a single soul. Education, knowledge about our Hebrew Bible, understanding about our Jewish faith, our rich history, and a remarkable destiny. And those days are coming. As the great prophet Zephaniah, you probably know him as Zephaniah. You know where he lived? He lived right here. He lived right here alongside people like Jeremiah in Jerusalem, preached here. One day all the nations will speak Bisafa Brura in a pure speech. We're not going to have a missionary problem. That problem will come to an end. As the prophet Zechariah describes a day when 10 Gentiles of different languages, they'll grab the shirt of a Jew. Why do they have to grab our shirt? Why do they have to grab the hem of our clothing? Because they won't want to let go. And they're going to say these words, Nelcho imochem, please, let us go with you. Ki shamanu, because we have heard the report. We know that God is with you. Please, God, we are living in that time. The transformation will be remarkable. And all nations will know that there is one God. He will be one. His name will be one because he will be king of the whole world. All the nations will accept the Almighty, the true God of Israel, as their king. Let's pray that that event happens quickly in our time. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה